Sometimes the music, it just gets in your head and you feel it and you know it and you're like, yo, I know what that sound means. The 16 other podcasts that use that same intro music are coming on, but no, it's not what it means right now, everyone. It means you are listening right now to the Because Cannabis podcast. Brand new episodes every single Wednesday on YouTube, 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if YouTube's not your jam, I get it. It's for the kids sometimes. You can't watch everything on YouTube. You're more of a traditional kind of person. I get that. That means you go to Spotify, you go to Apple Podcasts, you go to Google Play, you go to anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts. Dustin Kava, B.C. Wehman will be deep in your ear holes every single Thursday when brand new audio episodes come out. So Wednesdays, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Thursdays, everywhere you listen to audio, especially Spotify, you can find audio podcast version of that. Wayward Media, Dustin Kava, it's me, it's you, it's Because Cannabis. Welcome, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome today. Really, really good. How are you?
I am well. I'm looking forward to our show here. Every single week we put them together. We always find some great guests, Dustin, and it's convenient sometimes when the guest comes on and has the ability to converse about things that may be happening in my world. I'm a very selfish person, right? I am. I get that. I have problems. Sometimes I need a little therapy. Sometimes I need someone to talk to. That's what you're here for, Dustin. You're here for me to chat. You're here for me to sit with. That's really, I just like having you around. We both like cannabis and we're like, bro, fire up the recorder. Go. Simple as that, right, man?
That's it. That really is. That's all it is, really.
Sometimes it is. Hey, check out the show. We would really appreciate your support. We got some exciting things happening with Wayward Media, wayward.media on the interwebs. We got new shows coming down the line. Raven Ariola with Plant Save My Life podcast will be joining us soon. We have 2 or 3 other podcasts joining the Wayward Media network. Big things in store. So be sure to check us out, wayward.media at MeetWM socially or at Because Cannabis sometimes. So find out where that's at. Do us a solid. Hit the subscribe button. Clickety clack your finger. Give us a follow. Give us a 5-star review, people. Spread the word of Wayward everywhere that's out there. Right, Dustin? We got to bring the fans in. We got great content. We got evergreen content, which is a word I just relearned, apparently. We got lots of things happening in our world. We want you to know about it. We want you to spread the word. We want you to help us out. Make them subscribe, Dustin. Tell them whatever they need to hear. Go.
Please subscribe. It definitely helps. Doesn't need. Yep.
Yeah.
You know what, man? Every business I've ever fucking had in my entire life, I have never ever had to ask for a review. I've never asked for a fucking review. I'm not going to ask for a like and a fuck off on that. They're listening. They're watching. I see the stats. I got the statistics. They're fucking watching. So you are awesome. I know you're watching. I know you like the shit, and I appreciate you. But I'm not going to ask you for a damn thing because you're already giving me everything, which is your time. So yeah.
Like TLC, it ain't too proud to beg, Dustin Kava. I'm also not too proud to talk about friends of the show. Let me do a real quick plug before we bring our guest in. What if I told you, Dustin Kava, that bud gets better, right? I'd like to talk to you about Bud Love. It is not cannabis. It is a premium herbal mixer designed to be combined with your favorite strains. Easy for me to say, enjoy together. It's like a mixer for cocktails, but it's flower, right? It's marshmallow leaf, it's CBG, it's a truckload of terpenes, all designed to give you a great feeling. Active, maybe with Tropical Shipwreck, maybe inspired with their Super Lemon Haze, or even relaxed with Apple Scout cookies. You can even go au natural, Dustin, unflavored or tobacco, with no nicotine, no THC. Check out Bud Love at budlove.com. Enter the code Wayward15 at checkout to save 15% at budlove.com. We appreciate you supporting friends of the show. Dustin Kava, it is so vague right now. It finally happened.
I
know you want to know. I know I'm going to erupt. You can't figure out. I got, as Candace likes to say, busted. I didn't even get busted though. My wife got busted. It's taken this long. I talk about cannabis all the time. I'm pretty open with it. I got a freaking show that says Because Cannabis that I sit there and talk about. I talk about it on my social media. I post about it. Yet in the real world, no one that I deal with on a family level has actually ever said, do you smoke weed? Do you consume pot? Or whatever they say, whatever judgy McJudge-a-lots that they say. And the other day, and I've talked about this a lot on the show. I try to hide it. I try to keep it on the DL a bit because my wife does work in the school systems and I have children in the school systems. It happened to her, Dustin. Someone came up to my wife recently and said, "Do your husband sell weed?" That's exactly the quote she said to her. And I was like, and so here's the problem. My wife has, I love you, honey. She's somewhere out that door. She's like, social tact isn't a strong point, right? I'm a deliberately spoken person. I know what I'm saying. I'm aware of it. She is blunt and honest. She's the exact opposite of who I am sometimes, and it's wonderful. It's a yin yang that makes it compatible. But in this moment, I don't think she defended it well. She said, "Not exactly," which is not the answer I would give. Not exactly. I don't in any way. And if I did, it'd be legal THC, like CBD. It's so complicated. So I got busted. I had to explain. My wife had to feel awkward. And you know, we've had this conversation with my 16-year-old before. My younger kids are, you know, it's a thing. But I felt weird. I felt bad. I feel like you've been living in this world. You're like Bane. You don't live in it. I was born in it. You were born in the world of cannabis, Dustin. You've had more conversations around this topic. And I'm real excited for our guest today, Danielle Simone Brand, to talk about this as someone who's written about it and researched it. Do you feel weird when you run into someone particularly associated with something, maybe with your child and whatnot, that doesn't know your association, and then all of a sudden it's like spawns on them, right? Now, you had a smoke shop in a city, and so you
but
would
you know
see
what?
people, but then you're at a soccer game, right? How does that work?
The difference is I carried the artwork that I carried in my store was not just a pipe. It was pure art. It genuinely was. It was American made with very rare materials and a lot of time and a lot of fucking effort. And so when my children or my son would come into that house, the store, it was like, no, this is glass. It was always glass. This is the artwork. This is the technique. This is the shaping. This is what it is, you know? And my son would even go and I'd take him to see a glass blower and watch him, you know, make something, and he has plenty of little pendants and marbles and stuff that was made. And so, but it wasn't until this year that my son went to his teacher and said, "My dad has a YouTube channel called Because Cannabis." And it was just like, it was like the teacher's like, "Hey, Oliver, can you hang out with me at lunch for 2 minutes? I just want to get to know you." And the first damn thing he says is, "My daddy's a YouTube star with Because Cannabis." And it's like, no.
I like that he threw the word star in there, by the way.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, son, there's only 150 people following it. It ain't no star on anything. But at the same point, like that conversation is very difficult because I've never used cannabis in the terms of my work with him until the show and stuff like that. And so there was always something else to point out. And in this case, it's not because medicine, it's fucking because cannabis. There isn't that conversation already in that title where there's that nuance. I can't change the name. I can't change what it is. And so
no, you can't. Sometimes nuance isn't always the best way to get around things. As we welcome Danielle Simone Brand, author of Weed Mom, the Canna-Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the F out. Danielle Simone Brand, we got a lot to talk to you. As someone who wrote a book called Weed Mom, clearly we're going to talk about this subject. Clearly, Dustin is at a different comfort level than I am. I'm on pins and needles all day long. But that's not what I have to ask you right now. It's almost end of school year. We just had the end of school years recently. My kids are also in baseball. My wife and I had a small disagreement over how many times we had to provide snack for the variety of games because the list was so empty. So we got 4 snack slots coming up. So the real question is, Danielle, can I bring the same snack all 4 times, or do the children have expectations that I can bring? I usually bring, here's what I bring, like a salty and a sweet. So like last time, Goldfish, Rice Krispie treats, prepackaged, easy juice boxes, hugs, you interchange them, shop at Aldi's, Walmart, you go cheap, you're buying for people. But I have it coming up again next weekend. And I want to bring the same damn snacks because I bought like a 50 pack at Sam's Club. So I have a ton more Goldfish and a ton more Rainbow Rice Krispie treats individually wrapped for your pleasure waiting downstairs. My wife thinks it's tacky to bring the same snack. I need a mediation opinion, Danielle Simone Brand, author of Weed Mom, that I think only you can give. Same snacks? Or do I have to vary it up? What kind of pressure, what kind of needs do these little baseball players need?
Thanks so much for having me. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. Okay, I'm going to weigh in and say, in the interest of like the greater good, if you had not already purchased the snacks, then I would say go grab something different. You have them though, and that's a complete waste, of resources and, time, whatever, if you don't use it. So it's the greater good, in my opinion, to utilize what you have.
Dustin, do I need to vary snacks or can I keep them all the same?
I'm a data guy, so I'm the guy who watches the last 3 snacks and is like, okay, last game they had the goldfish. I'm bringing pretzel.
Yes.
Goldfish.
Oh yeah. You got to toss the pretzels in as the opposite.
So I don't know. I would rue the day that I go out and get my pretzel goldfish for these kids, and the time before the game before I'm supposed to deliver, a parent brings the pretzel goldfish.
It's a lot of pressure being snack parent. I feel like it's a lot of pressure. Like those little kids, they both want it, but then they judge you. Like, come on, really? Like it's like trick or treat. Like to say, geez, I got the hiccups today. Same basic concept, right? Like you have a certain snack, you want to be the lollipop guy. I love a good dum-dum sucker, right? But you put that in the bowl for a child to come pick up, and there's eggs in your muffler later. Like, bro, what is this garbage? You give me a dum-dum, I get that at Great Clips when I get my follicles cut. Apparently, I got some things I need to work out. I need help, Danielle Simone Brand.
You sounds like you've got some trick-or-treaters with issues.
Yeah, thank God I got months to prepare for that. All right, Danielle, let's talk through this. Let's go through this. Dustin and I have had a tremendous, thank you, by the way, for joining us on the show today, because cannabis, Dustin and I talk about this a lot. We've had, because of both of us being parents, I am a little older than Dustin. So I have a 25, a 16, and 2 14-year-olds. Dustin's children are smaller. Younger than me in that, but I don't know why I had to throw that in there. So we have different forms of conversations, right? My oldest grew up in an era where I was very in the cannabis closet. I didn't even work in the industry, was very nervous about it. And now my high schooler is going through an age where they understand what weed is. They know how people smoke pot. They're down with the grass. They get all those cool terms. No one says grass in high school, but they should. They did in the 70s, people. So they're very, very open, right? And on top of that, I feel an extra level to educate, because not only is cannabis, the cannabis that we commonly associate as THC and grass and weed, available, but I have shops down the road, less qualified shops than inhalables in Brunswick, shops down the road that sell gosh knows what cannabinoid product covered in what oil juice that can get them legally high. So I'm also struggling with, like, don't smoke that shit. Like, slow down. Like, if you're going to consume, don't do something that's from overseas that you have no idea what this product is. Like, let me get you great CBD or great CBG flower. So let's just start there, Danielle. You wrote a few years ago, you decided to share kind of your story as a parent, your story as a cannabis consumer, and there's a variety of twists and turns in Weed Mom about how you came to it. Weed Mom, you can find it right now on Amazon or on DanielleSimoneBrand.com. The Canna-Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happy Parenting, and Chilling the F Out. Why share your story? I struggle with it all the time, right? So let's just go big picture and we'll drill down into some of the topics. I struggle with coming out of the cannabis closet. I'm very much out now, but clearly I got issues with it. Why bother sharing your story when you probably could have used an anonymous name and just put it out there? Why share it so much? Because it's so much pressure.
Yeah, it is. It's pressure, and it changes your life. It changes the way people perceive you. It changes the conversations that you have. But I think that it's one of the only ways that we actually push this conversation forward when it comes to normalization and to cannabis and parenting. I want us, Canna parents, you can put Canna in front of anything, right? And make it a word.
Every cannabis company in the world. We're at the point now where, like, don't put Canna, don't put Mara, don't put green in the title, people. They've been done. But it is fun. It is a great little, I don't know if it's an adjective or I don't know. It's a grammatical term for what you can do with that. But Canna something is amazing.
Compound. Yeah, right.
Compound words. There
you go.
Ask a writer, get good answers.
Canna parenting, Canna naive, Canna-Curious, Canna-phobic. I mean, right? There's so many uses. But as Canna parents, I think that if we show ourselves as, just parents, like doing our best, like everybody else, loving our kids, you know, doing great in some ways, struggling in other ways, like everybody else, you know, that, you know, and also to show the ways that it enhances and, you know, and heals us, that it actually like makes us better parents. And I, you know, I hate to say that actually, that cannabis makes me a better parent, but what it does is it just calms down the like shitty sides of my brain. It calms down the anxious sides, the, you know, impatient, the, you know, to do driven forward side of my brain. That's important in, you know, in certain aspects of my life, but not so much when I deal with my kids. Right. So, you know, I think that if we show all the ways that cannabis helps us, heals us, enhances our, you know, our health and our lives, that like we're going to get a little further in this conversation and push that, you know, push that envelope forward.
Yeah. I actually, B.C, I want to think about my next question a little bit more. Do you have
Are you literally deflecting question right now? We have a very clear pattern, Dustin Kava, on the Because Cannabis show. I ask, you ask. Hold on, I got a question, but that's all right, Dustin. You threw me under the bus. Go for that. It is true though, Danielle. Like it is true as Dustin thinks about his next important question he's going to ask you. It's something about advancing the mission, and it's a tough line, right? And I think that's, in general, I feel like it's a lot of pressure that cannabis companies put on themselves. There's this, every time I hear someone talk about a startup, or I hear someone talk about cannabis. I just had this conversation 2 days ago with someone about CBG, which I have fallen in love with as a cannabinoid and as a consumable. I know some amazing folks locally who grow in Northeast Ohio, some CBG that just, it's life-changing because it's just the way it makes you feel. I recommend trying it from a quality place. And someone I know is shutting down, turning off the lights, as they say, selling off all their CBG because they can't pay the bills because no one knows about CBG. And is like, I just didn't spend enough time telling people what it is. That education part, it's hard, right? You're right. You want to get out there. You want to tell people it's a medicine. Don't judge me. Like I'm not a stoner sitting on my ass all day smoking weed. You're clearly, you know, a motivational person who's out there doing things and living a good life and staying active while consuming cannabis on the side. Do you feel pressure to always advocate and educate? Sometimes you just want to talk about it or consume it and have fun, but it feels like this burden that canna talkers have to put on themselves is the advocacy and the education of the product. You like it? I mean, maybe you enjoy that part. Where do you sit on, look, I have to both talk about the product. I want to consume it. I want to enjoy it. I want to promote it, but do I have to teach every time, or do you like that? Where do you sit on that angle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, you know, I do see it as a responsibility and a privilege also, you know, to be able to speak about this and to, you know, to have people mostly be receptive to me, partly because you know, I'm middle class and white and whatever, you know, they're just like things that are in my favor that, you know, I think make, you know, sort of a mainstream audience a little more receptive to what I have to say about cannabis. So like, you know, I talk about that privilege in the book and the fact that I can be an ambassador, you know, and so I do take that responsibility kind of seriously as like, you know, a communicator or go-between between like, you know, the cannabis world and mainstream momdom, mainstream mummery. I just made that up.
I like it though. Put that on the next cover. Mainstream momdom.
So, you know, so yes, I think it's important to do so. But yeah, of course, there are times when like I just want to chill and I just, you know, don't want to have to be that conversation or, you know, to have that conversation, or I don't want to have to like, you know, overcompensate in a way and be that super stand-up responsible mom because I don't want people to judge me. You know, if I ever show up late to a kid function or something, I feel like, you know, people are giving me side eye, stoner mom. So, you know, so I'm really uber responsible.
That is so true though.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a stigma that we're still dealing with.
And I have that opposite. It took me a long time because I was going through custody things for my son, and that privilege of having that conversation was done in a totally different way. Like owning the smoke shop ruined my fight in a lot of ways. It ruined the voice that I had, and it didn't matter how many employees I had. It didn't matter how much of an effect on the community we had. None of these things mattered because at the end of the day, I was marijuana smoker and user and a man who sells pot devices, and that's all I fucking was. And so, you know, I think about that. It's even as a white male, I even had an even easier time with the court system than cannabis, even though the judge was like, you own a head shop and she's a nurse. What do you want me to fucking do? Like, this is clear, you know? And so when I think about other minority groups, they don't even have that fucking voice. It is, you know, it's you. Oh, you use cannabis? Well, you're going to jail. Not just like we're going to have this conversation, say something's bad or good, or you shouldn't be, or what, where we can have an open and honest discussion. I'm actually going to take an action against you and have it affect your family and taking care of your children. And so I've always operated under a little bit of fear in certain regards until I was finally able to make the fight and justify and have my say, have truly feel like I had a voice and what I was doing wasn't wrong. And my community I was supporting, you know, I had all those extra things.
Yeah.
And so to me, I just have this hard time of feeling like, and then on top of that, do I need to tell everybody about every bit of medication? If someone's on Zoloft or something, I don't expect to hear them at the grocery store being like, oh, by the way, I'm on Zoloft and it's fucking pretty good. It helps me deal with my kids.
Yeah. And no one's like coming up with you. You're like, hey, I take Adderall tonight. Like, so weird.
Exactly. Yeah. But this cannabis thing, there's this hip effect to it. There's this new age thing. There's this ultra organic, healthy thing that's not pharmacological. There's all these things that people get to kind of bring up as like we should be talking about it. And I'm definitely going to let you know that I smoked a joint. This is, but even at Cub Scouts and shit, yes, I have a lot of parents who go like, what do you do? And I'm like, I take pictures of weed for a living. Like, I'm a fucking cannabis marketer. I build websites. Like, I smoke all day. You know? And so it's just, there is that. There certainly is, but I don't give a fuck anymore.
Clearly. How do you balance that though, Danielle? Like, what's that been like for you coming out of your closet? Have you felt judgy McJudged? Like, what's it been like? Dustin's clearly got some PTSD from it. What are you dealing with?
You know, I have to say that by and large, people's reaction, the public's reaction, and people that I know as well, the reaction has been largely positive. I mean, I think that, like I said, some of that is just the way that I present myself and the way that I present the topic, you know, and I talk about, I try to educate people as much as I can. I try to lead with like, this is how it helps me specifically. These are the benefits. I'm very, you know, proactive around the like safety and responsibility conversation, just because like people still need that reassurance. We're still at this place where people don't understand the plant enough, or, you know, everyday consumers enough to know that we definitely know our limits and we definitely know how to consume safely and keep the kids in our care safe and all that good stuff.
That's one of the things I did appreciate about your books. I read your book and it was awesome. There is this parts of the book that I was like, holy shit, I can't believe that she actually divulged into that or openly gave that information when it was very personal and very, and I also like the way you weren't presenting yourself as an expert. You were presenting yourself as someone who's had an experience and to describe that experience, saying that I don't have all the fucking information all the time, but I know in these usage cases with these particular things at these times, this did help and is working for me. And I also like the realism, even in parts of the parenting section, that was like, don't you fucking watch your kids swimming and smoke weed? Like, that's not, like, there are clear boundaries here. Yes. You know, we're not saying, even when I say I smoke weed all day, if I have my children in the house, it's not the same case. There's not, there are things that you're always going to have to do and you have to have that focus on. And I like that open and realism. That's just like, this isn't a free for all. I'm not just saying weed is fucking awesome all the time. There are some negatives. I personally know people that have negatives. Here's what happened to them. And here's how I navigate between those two spots. And I love that that's what the book represented in so many ways.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, like as an advocate, clearly I am an advocate and someone, you know, who truly believes in the power of this plant. And yet, like, I think that being overly optimistic or, you know, thinking that it's either a cure-all or that there is no harm in cannabis, like that does it a detriment. Like really, realistic education is what is going to help, normalize the plant and help people use it in ways that are healthful, responsible, all that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to call out some of the things that I think can be problematic, even though I freaking love weed. And I think it's much more helpful than detrimental, but like, let's just be open-minded about it, or, let's be realistic.
Did you struggle sometimes with how much to share? I often think about, like, I try not to, I probably should listen to these shows again, do my homework, get a little better. But I say stuff probably already today about my wife that I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have. But once it's out there, it's out there. And I don't really think about it. I don't go back. I don't have I don't want to use the word luxury, but I don't have the ability. Well, I guess I do technically. I'm really all over the place to go back and edit that out, right? Like you go through and you reread the book and you edit the book and you hand it to someone else who's going to read it and give you feedback. You may give it to friends and family. They give you feedback. And as Dustin said, and I haven't read the book yet. Thank you, Dustin, for doing your part. Some of the things he's telling me before we record about your family and some of the things you mentioned about your relationship and how you discovered it and such was pretty personal information. And I got to imagine how the reaction from some of those people involved might have felt. How did you feel, or what was the process like when it came to sharing some difficult things, sharing information that you're going to get judged on, right? Whether, people are going to have, it's the internet, it's 2023. They always have opinions. Did you struggle with that? Was there stuff you left out? What was that balance you found between how much to actually say and stuff that maybe should be kept in the cannabis closet, so to speak?
In the cannabis closet. Well, yeah, again, great question. So a little bit of background about myself as a writer. I began writing a memoir before I was writing about cannabis at all, before I was freelancing. I wrote a memoir that is as yet unpublished, as many are, about my family, my husband and myself, and our 2-year-old son. And I was also pregnant with our daughter. So this was about 11 years ago. We left Washington, D.C., had very D.C.-focused lives and careers, went to Northern Colorado, about 36 acres, did our best to homestead, and failed miserably at it. It sucked so
At least bad. You're honest.
And so I had already developed that story and sort of what, motivated us, what went right there, what went terribly wrong there, just the whole story with its goods and bads and funny moments. I had already turned that into a memoir and really studied the genre a lot and read a lot of memoir and took a lot of classes in memoir. And I had been a writer in previous, careers, previous incarnations of my career, but more sort of academically focused. So, delving into memoir and then getting into freelance writing through the avenue of personal essays. And then after that, getting into freelance writing about cannabis and more journalistic style of things. Basically, in this book, I wanted to marry those ideas, those ways of writing. I love narrative nonfiction, where the author takes you through their journey and does research and does interviews and pulls you in, through this personal narrative lens. It's those are the most captivating books to me. So that's what I wanted to write. And I wanted it to be I'm your cannabis bestie, taking you through this, this experience and introducing you to the, experts that you should know and, the stories of other canna moms and things like that. So I also needed to be credible and tell my own actual story to do that. And, I got permission. My husband read, excuse me, my husband read every version before it got published. And he gave permission. And he also, interviewed with me for the book. In chapter 9, I do a Q&A with him. So, and yeah, there are certain family members who I think were triggered by the book and probably didn't read the whole thing. They probably read the first chapter and were like, okay, closed.
No way. I don't know. It kept bringing up so many similarities between even my past, and I like the way it brought up more questions to me. This idea of what co-parenting does look like with cannabis, with someone who doesn't smoke cannabis, or what or what happens when they dislike it completely, and they're adamantly against it. Not like you can smoke and just leave it away from me, but we can't be copacetic together just because this is happening. And so I don't know. I'm not sure that someone in that narrative sense. I don't think anybody who bought the book started reading and said, I just stop in here. I think when they got the book, they knew exactly that they were getting it through your lens in that way. And I don't know. The book was fucking awesome. I don't know what you're talking about. The book was fucking great.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I love creative writing, and I also love to convey information. So that was just my hope, is to make it, entertaining and fun to read, and to just convey the right info for someone who's either Canna-Curious, or, there are plenty of women actually who have loved cannabis for a while who are like, oh yeah, I actually learned a couple things from your book, and that makes me feel really good.
I would imagine so, like that education of people who are already in the industry, who are familiar with it, and you kind of get that validation from them. I would imagine that feels really cool to feel. But it's tough, because everyone, if you've ever been on LinkedIn and Googled or typed cannabis in the thing, everyone's got an opinion these days, Danielle. Everyone's got an opinion on cannabis. Everyone's got an opinion on how to be successful. Everyone's got an opinion on what to do. And sometimes they come off as so, I don't know, bullish is the word. I'm trying to find something the right word, like just bravado and talking about how awesome they are and how you should do this and how the education part of it. And so I think into what Dustin alludes to in the book is it kind of explains it normal, like average. I think that's an issue sometimes in the industry, is everyone tries to get, like Dustin said, everyone tries to talk about terpenes and everyone tries to talk about all the different issues and the veganness. And sometimes we just forget that it's just a plant that can help you out a little bit and relax, or make you feel a little better, or make you feel a little sleepy. It's that same thing. And you really brought up a good point, Dustin, that I never thought about too much, is everyone just wearing their cannabis medication like on their sleeve. Like, just literally they hand you a business card and like, these are the strains I like to smoke at night because these make me feel better. These are the strains that I take 6 dabs a day. No one's telling me, at the pharmacy, I give like 12 feet of space because I don't want to know what cholesterol medicine that person's on. No one walks around and hands you a card of the 19 different blood pressure medicines and the thyroid and, enlarger that they're taking. But in weed, we're like, bro, these are the medicines I'm smoking. It's like this fine line between evangelicalism, easy for me to say, of the industry, and just normalizing, right? I think that's that balance. But I think Weed Mom does a really good job of that. And then hopefully, that has had that ability for you. And the same thing you're doing now, like you're continuing to share. You're with part of Dr. Bridget Williams and the Courage in Cannabis book as well. So obviously, you like getting out there, like sharing the story as far as that goes. But it can be tough. So long-winded way to get to Dustin and I, right? We both have kids, and they're kids at different ages. And we always are trying to figure out, how do we talk to them about it? Like, and I think that's a question we got to go down to for a bit, because I think it's different for younger kids, high school kids, maybe even adult kids with older folks, or even how to talk to your parents. Like, that's my parents are 70 and they judge me about the weed show I do every week, right? And the weed school I work at. That's the 2 words I get. You doing that weed show today? Like, that's cannabis, Dad. I am 50, right? I'm 50 years old, and I get shamed by my parents. Even though all their friends are medical patients of Florida, but I'm getting shamed now, right? Because I talk about weed openly and stuff like that. So it's this weird part. So let's start with kids, and then maybe we'll talk to the non-believers and the seniors. How do we do it, right? What happens when Dustin's teacher calls and says, do you have a weed show? Are you smoking weed? Is there weed in the house? Like, that conversation, both with the child and people outside, has to be difficult. You've thought about it, you've researched it, you've talked about it a lot in shows like this. So let's start there. How do we talk? I mean, that's a big question, but we could probably narrow it down. What do we do when the kids ask, do you smoke weed, Mom? And they're like 7, and all they've been told is dare and weed is bad and all these things. And now they're like, is that weed?
Oh gosh. Well, okay. I would say hopefully we start the conversation before they get the negative messaging from the outside, because that's the way that we shape their thoughts of it, their view on it, in a positive way. So hopefully that's the case in most parents out there. Canna parents have that opportunity. I know that not everyone does, and people have kids of all sorts of ages, been through different schooling experiences, and DARE is still out there, as you said, and there's still a lot of negative messaging about cannabis. So, it's age specific. It depends on your relationship with the plant, how deeply involved with it you are, and how, what the necessity is to talk about. It depends on where you live and what the legal situation is, all sorts of things. I have a whole chapter on it, and I do pepper in throughout other chapters, ways that I talk to my kids about cannabis, because I don't think there's a one size fits all prescription for how to do it. But I do think that if it's safe for you, if it's safe for the parent, depends again, your relationship status, right? Your co-parenting situation, if you're separated or divorced, things like that really do matter. But if it's safe for you, I think, educating, talking about it, normalizing early and often is a good thing. Some people choose to say to little kids, this is mama's medicine. This is daddy's medicine. That's one way to do it. Another way is just to say, I'm taking a moment for myself, and I'm going to come back more relaxed and patient to hang out with you. Right. So talking about the benefits, talking about, and also I would say that with cannabis and kids, it's not like a sit down, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know.
No, wait till they ask the question. They will let you know when they're interested or they have, want information on it. And every one of the children are different. One's going to come up and say, Dad, this is what triggered, this is what I was asked. And each question is different between the kids, and especially the different ages. So I would hate to keep repeating the same conversation to each one, thinking it was resonating in the same way, knowing that they all perceive the things differently. My girlfriend has 2 children, and the daughter would perceive things in a more emotional way. She would see the difference in effects of how you acted after you left the room when she smelled something, like she could. And then my son is more inclined to seeing me probably not be in pain, being like, or, he's to see the physical, like daddy was able to play baseball and football with me today. And so it's a total, and it's just between the different children, so I love that nuance. And it's just, that nuance scares me the most. It's, oh shit, did I say the right thing to this? Did I just fuck up this one kid's perception on it, and the rest of my children are going to be okay? Like, I'm nervous about that stuff.
Well, it's also a series of conversations that, it's not like, you fuck it up once and that's it. Like, you're going to keep
It's not like the magical birds and bees. Everyone says the birds and bees, like you have one conversation with them and then you close the book. You're like, we're never talking about sex again, everyone. We had it one time. It's the same thing. It's a malleable, living, breathing conversation. So it's not just let's have the talk, we talk, kids, and then you never talk about it again, because that's the opposite of what I think it is, as we all have probably found to be successful parents, is you can't just have it one time and then turn your back and be like, I did my part, check.
Oh, right. Yeah, they never learn anything when you tell them once.
Right.
I mean, let's be real. Like, how often
I have some that don't learn something when you learn to tell them a lot.
Well, okay. But, how often do you have to remind your kids to do the basic, it's repetition and, and just slow normalization. And, and I did bring it up before my kids started asking questions, just because I don't know why. Maybe because my impulse is toward honesty. My impulse is toward openness with my kids. And I, to the extent that's age appropriate. And I want them to, have positive perceptions of this plant, and I want them to understand what I do for a living, actually, because I like to talk about my work here and there, not, details of terpenes with them or, whoa, I got so baked, but, but my work is exciting to me and interesting. And so, I like being able to share bits and pieces. My kids are 10 and 13, so they do have some context for the world these days.
And it's a lot of context. YouTube and the kids at school are talking about some shit that the 4th graders are talking about stuff that I would have been talking about in like 9th grade and been like, whoa, I'm still uncomfortable. It's unbelievable, the progression in their thought process and their access to information, that they know where to find the thing that they're looking about. It's not just knowing that the internet has everything. It's saying, I'm going to this specific place to get this type of information. It's incredible. They are so much further ahead in that regard. And so, of course my son Googled me. Of course he did.
Of course.
Oh my God, I never thought about that.
And so, of course, when the things came up, and I don't know, that also got to bring up this really amazing parenting discussion, which is, everything you do is tracked, brother. Like you're a kid, everything you watch, everything you say, you're going to get into an argument with some kid, you know, your friend on the bus. It's all being talked about on the internet. And, you know, this is what happens. You're able to look this up, and who you were 10 years ago is not going to be who you are, you know, now. And it's all there. And to live in that perception of knowing about that from that early, I don't know. They have a whole different thing. They don't get to make the same mistakes that I got to make and have the same
undocumented mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
mistakes that you made and you screwed up on and you learned from and you moved on. Now, if you're having a mistake or having a bad day and someone's next to you with a cell phone, you go viral, right? You all of a sudden became famous, or even even locally famous, right? You don't have to be mega famous. You can just have enough people in your community recognize you as the person who slipped on the ice and hit your head on the curb at Acme and dropped your milk everywhere and all that thing. And you're like, oh, that's the Acme milk guy. Like, yes, I did. So it's a hard thing. It's hard in the modern society to keep up with this. I'm curious, Danielle, and we're talking with Danielle Simone Brand, author of Weed Mom. You can find that book right now on Amazon. You can find it on daniellesimonebrand.com, which is in both of those links are in the description in the comments below. As we kind of talked about in the beginning, and I'm curious, you know, the book's been out for a little bit, about 2 years now, and the cannabis industry has evolved, even where you're at out west, and definitely it's evolved as it moves more eastern. It's not just weed. It is not just that grass that people are smoking. We have all these other cannabinoids that I can find legally right now. And I'm just not talking CBD or even my favorite CBG. You have the deltas, right, which we know are oils sprayed onto plants, which can be done well and safe and organic, or can be done in a factory overseas that you have very little control over. Have you had the conversations? Your kids are getting to be that age, and I'm sure people have wondered, like, how do we have the conversations of, yeah, this is good weed, this is bad weed, this is good cannabis, this is bad cannabis. It's weird to educate, like they both make you feel a way, but this one's safer. Like, how is that? Because you don't have to have that with Adderall. There's no like, this is the good Adderall, this is the bad, right? The doctor gives you prescription, you assume it's good, but we have to educate, there's that word again, people on good cannabis, bad cannabis. Don't eat too many edibles. How has that process been for you as the industry evolves in more products? Because even when you wrote it, the legality was just new with the Farm Bill and CBD and stuff. No one had realized they were going to deltify this world in the smoke shops, right? So how's that been, trying to educate people on good product, bad product, right?
Yeah, you know, that's something that I would really like the opportunity to update my book about, because, like, as you said, it's changed. That landscape has drastically altered in the last couple of years since I've written the book. And so my main avenues are the articles that I write, you know, as a freelance writer, as well as
I love the dog. Don't you be stopping and worrying about that. That dog is that's life. That's
a weed mom's dog right there. Dog's probably eating weed edibles right now, because it's all weed all the time in Danielle's house, allegedly.
What he's doing is letting us know that there's a squirrel outside or somebody walking by.
Squirrel's got weed in its mouth.
It's my issue. That's like, if I am ADHD, it's in the auditory capacity. I get so freaking distracted. Like, if somebody in my house opens the refrigerator, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, are they coming in here? You know.
They probably make a cannabis product to help you tune that out.
And that's one way that cannabis actually really helps me is, it helps me dial in better and access, you know, different parts of my brain. Okay. So as I was saying, I would love that opportunity. So I freelance about, you know, these, sometimes I have the opportunity to write about that, and also on social media. That's kind of where I educate when I have the, you know, when I have the courage to post about cannabis, honestly, because my Instagram account has been deleted 3 full times, and I've been able to retrieve it, to get it back each time through multiple appeals and other people appealing for me. But anyway, that's a side note we can talk about.
And I've never gotten the accounts back, so I am like, heck yeah, like, I'm so proud of you for being able to stay in the fight long enough and see it through, which is, it's incredibly it's hard.
It's disheartening because that's the connection I have with my readers is through social media. That's, the way they communicate with me, tell me that the book has impacted them, helped them in some way. That's the way they ask me questions, and I answer tons of questions about personal use, or policies, or, just advice about being a canna mom through these avenues. And yet, and of course, I'm promoting responsible canna parenting. I'm promoting education. Knowing the products that you're buying, knowing the companies you're supporting and what they're up to, like wanting to elevate the conversation and, push this conversation to a more conscious place. And yet, accounts like mine get shut down all the time. And it's a bummer. It's disheartening, as you said. But, I'm still here and still doing it. And actually, I will tease this idea that there may be a Weed Mom TV show in the near-ish future.
Ooh, are we talking like nonfiction narrative, or has someone been cast to play you?
Nonfiction narrative.
Oh.
So this is something that I am in like very preliminary talks with. I'm working with a producer, basically.
Love it.
But yeah, the show hasn't been picked up by anybody yet, but I'm working with a producer who, wants to showcase, who wants to help me showcase successful canna parent stories and, just successful cannabis stories in our society, and kind of coach people on what sort of their next level could be, what, how they can level up in their cannabis.
Yeah. Yes. Use it to actually start. When you finally dial in the wellness and you say, I'm using this particular thing at this particular moment in this particular dose, that now you're enhancing parts of your life. You truly are. And cannabis is just one of those medicines that there's so many variances to it that you get to. I can use this type of tincture. I can use, I can smoke when I need this effect. I can vape when I need this effect. To have that nuance there is part of the power. We keep always talking about this, like we need to educate the need between, shitty weed and good weed. And that is not something new. Any parent that I've ever known that was having the conversation about weed with their children has said, hey, I will get you, if you're going to smoke weed, I don't want you to smoke your friend's weed. I'll get you your stuff. We'll smoke together and it'll be this whole thing.
That's
and it's like, so I don't know.
Okay, so you were brave enough to say it.
That's a valid point, though. You know what? It's 100% correct, Dustin. You're right. It's been that way. It's not like I feel like back then, no, it wasn't as dangerous. Like the bad weed was just dirt weed. It was just not going to get you as high, right? Now it's a combination of both. You have to teach them to avoid the crazy potent stuff that's out there, right? You got some crazy high potency, and you have to teach your kids how to eat like a candy bar, right? Like once again, I give my kid a candy bar, they're probably gonna eat the whole thing. So now they're looking at an edible and they're like, well, it's a candy bar, eat it. And next thing you know, they're gone for 2 days on the floor, right? Because they're just like, it's tripping their balls off. So it's a balance. And you have the safety issue. You didn't have, the product that was chemically created. It was still just grown outdoors. It just wasn't really fully grown to get the terpene profile, right? They weren't talking about terp. So it's a little bit different than good weed, bad weed. It's sometimes safe products, safe, healthy consumption, with your friends, even in that peer pressure, like, oh, let's just smoke this. I got this joint and it's rolled in hash and dipped in wax, and you've had a little bit of weed and now you're smoking like, I don't know what the kids call it these days. That's how out of touch I am. Like, you're smoking this crazy thing. I had one of these the other day, by the way, 2 hits, done for the night, done. Someone gave me one. It was a pre-roll, rolled in oil, coated in like, it was stupid. It was stupid how high I got from it. So I would not want like your child trying that for the first time. And so I think that's where it's not just smoke the good stuff or smoke stuff that's better for you, because it's safe and healthy, and like how to consume without, I use the term, consuming too much that puts you in a place that you may regret, like make a bad decision on that, which is what cannabis is always touted as, till you eat a whole candy bar and you're like, you have a psychoactive break, and now you're like, oh shit, I can never do it again. So I think that's that tough balance when you talk about it and you promote it, is like, you got to teach them how to do it safely. I don't know. I haven't figured it out clearly.
No, I completely agree. Teaching respect for the plant is what I want my kids to. I don't want them to think like, it's perfect and amazing and safe for everybody. Yes. No, but it's beneficial and has these, potential downsides. You need to treat it with respect. And I think that's where having a very open conversation regarding cannabis, regarding drugs in general, because I write about psychedelics. So I do talk about, sometimes other drugs. I mean, drugs come up in culture and TV shows and music we listen to all the time. So there's a lot of opportunity to have these open conversations, because I do tell my kids a lot. There are a lot of drugs out there. Some of them are pretty safe if you use them, in the proper context, in the proper amount. Some of them are really dangerous. Some of them, I think when you're old enough, you may want to experiment with if it feels like, if you're called to it. And others, I hope you don't, because they can be really...
psychedelic
You're
conversation.
So cool. You're so cool, Danielle. Like, that is the coolest way to explain. It is totally, by the way, she's winking with mushrooms and ayahuasca, clearly. Because she's not talking about cocaine. She's not like, if you want to try, dabble. Right. But that is a cool way to say it. I feel like, write that down, people. Like, timestamp this. We're 50 minutes into this conversation.
I do not want that to be the cut up. That's not the quote of the show. There is so much more information there.
Do good drugs. That's what I'm taking from this whole conversation, Danielle Simone Brand.
Well, that's not a terrible thing to take away.
So funny.
Harm reduction is, I like to say I help moms take drugs responsibly, right? My whole thing is I believe in the power of plant medicine. I like to explore consciousness, and I want to set up boundaries in which I can do it more safely, and others too.
Can we talk real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt, Dustin. We talk real quick about the genderization of this. You kind of mentioned the mom thing, and we had a guest on recently on a past show. You can find us on YouTube at Because Cannabis, where we talked about Dustin's experience in the smoke shop. His client base back then, 10 years ago, was still heavily female, or at least 50-50 split. But for some reason, people think cannabis is like a dude drug, right? It seems to fall in that line. And I know we've had a lot of great entrepreneurs who are female and minorities, and they've talked about all these struggles on these past episodes. But it's something that's interesting because I think it's this world. And I think by putting a book like Weed Mom out there, even though the numbers and the sales data clearly shows pretty much a 50-50 split between what you classify as male and female, I think it's something that needs to be kind of like when we deal with minority ownership. It does need to be celebrated, right? The fact that you are a mom, because there's just something weird. These way people create these images of what a mother is, and it feels more like the dad's allowed to be a little reckless and hang with the boys and smoke some weed, and mom's got to get the shit straight in the kitchen and now, right? Like, we break down, and that's a severe stereotype of it, but it does feel, and it's getting better, but you would know way more than we would. Do you feel like, let me ask you, do you feel like it's getting better and more acceptance to strictly say, I'm a mom, I'm a female business owner and entrepreneur in the cannabis space, and not get the, oh, that's cute, honey? Is that passed yet? Are we still there with that condescending stage? Is it case by case? How has it been for you to not just talk about the cannabis part, but to openly celebrate who you are as a person? Like, it is an individual, as a woman making her way in this space. Do you feel like it's getting better? What's it been like in your experience over the last several years that you've been doing this?
Yes, I do feel like it's getting better. Like, in certain pockets, for sure, the stigmas are waning, and some you could even say like they're almost gone. But for large swaths of the country, there remain, even legal states, plenty of legal states have a lot of anti-cannabis, or just, lack of understanding for why and how a parent would use cannabis, right? There's still plenty of that. I do think it's getting better. I think that over the last couple of years, during the pandemic, there was really a proliferation of like Canna Mom type accounts on social media. And I think that, it's in the zeitgeist. There's just more willingness to be open. At the same time that we're being like shut down and clamped down on social media, there's this proliferation, like I said, of, people wanting to spread the information of like, kind of like a celebratory, or sometimes like a, F you, I can do what I want kind of vibe, and then there's all sorts of ways to push that conversation forward. I mean, the way that I choose to do it, again, is like more with education and also some of that celebratoriness. I think on social media, that's appropriate to a degree, you know, certainly Instagram. My friend Bianca Snyder, I don't know if you know High Society Mama on Instagram. She's, you know, she's a good friend now, but we met through both being Canna Mom activists. And, you know, she's just so good at inspiring confidence in living the life that you want, you know, living the way that makes most sense to you and feeds you most so that you can show up for your children in whatever way that is, including with plant medicine. And actually, she's a hemp grower who is doing the Delta 8 the right way, Delta 10.
There's some great stuff out there, but you got to have it done the right way. I have stuff right here. So right next to me, but I know literally know the person who makes it, grows it, and processes it. So
exactly,
I feel better about that version of Delta 8 than I do with something that I buy in an unsavory smoke shop.
Absolutely. Sourcing matters.
What do you feel though about the new proliferation of like do you think that the pink tax is going to be applied to now cannabis products in the industry? Because, you know, like BC and we just went through a couple articles on one of the previous shows where there was this discussion that female smokers smoke differently than male smokers, and thus we need to be targeting them differently with our products. They like this super low dose, super thing, like they generalized on all these damn things. And I've already seen, you know, the pink tax is very real. Make a fucking product pink, charge an extra 15%. It comes at you in so many ways. And do you think that the industry is going to shift towards applying that same rhetoric? Or do you think that it is an industry that is able to differentiate itself in some way and somehow push back that norm and market to everyone? Because they're already looking at the data in the same way. They're already, the articles are being wrote as if this is the generalization. And so it's like they're prime and prepping the industry to fucking think in that way already. It's being...
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, I will definitely say that, you know, the low dose pretty products that I see in the dispensaries that are definitely geared more toward female consumers are more expensive per milligram, of course, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you can get 100 milligrams on one hand and like a single edible in some cases, right? For cheap, or you can get like 2.5 milligrams and the whole package has 10 and the thing is $30. So, right. So that does exist. I do like the lower dose products, and I do like the kind of, you know, feminine aesthetic because it does, you know, it does appeal to some folks, and it brings in, you know, more people who could benefit from cannabis, but won't be attracted to the kind of, you know, quote unquote stoner vibe of, you know, of certain kinds of marketing, or who just don't need high milligrams.
Blaming weed Cheetos and nerds ropes that are like,
totally. So I mean, okay, the bougie options, like they're nice, but you know, not all women.
Delicious. This is birthday cake flavored weed popcorn, people. Amazing.
What the hell?
Yeah, Dustin, you got to try some. It's amazing. I gotta tell you right now, it just tastes fantastic. I'm just giving her props. I have caramel apple and white cheddar cheese in there too. No names, please. It's delicious. So I think right there, and that right there, this product right here is what I sometimes worry about. I have to keep this. I'm not worried about my children, and we should talk about a little bit about some parenting techniques here. I'm not worried about my kids, to be honest with you, getting into my stash of flour or even lighting up a pre-roll that I may have set up, right? Or taking the dab rig and putting concentrates. I can barely figure out how to use a dab rig. I know my kid can't, but birthday cake flavored popcorn? Yeah, right. Everybody loves birthday cake flavored popcorn. So what is your response to people who say, well, okay, how are you going to keep them away from all that weed you got in your house? Like that's a common rhetoric. That's a common like response to when you say you're a parent or you have cannabis in the house. It's, well, how do you stop your kids from smoking weed? Even though they have a liquor cabinet, right? Clearly open. Like, how do you stop them from smoking all that weed? And once again, it's not the weed. The edibles and stuff are where I really think about these days. Cause that's what, even though this is clearly not marketed traditionally to kids, it's birthday cake flavored. It's yummy. Like you take one bite, and it's hard not to eat this whole 250 milligram bag because it's rough. What's that response, or how do we deal with those folks who say, well, how your kids are going to smoke all the weed? How do you lock it up? Like, how do we handle that kind of comeback because it's common. It's very common as a parent when you say it. And I think I've had a parent deny a sleepover here because they're like, where they're going to, what if they find your product? Like A, it's in a locked safe, so they're not getting it. It's safer than the weapons you probably have in your house. B, I wouldn't let it, right? Kids aren't going to smoke the flower. It's not that's not, I mean, they can, but especially today with all the different ways you can make it consumable, I think that's the hard stuff. How do we lock it up? How do we tell people that kids aren't smoking our weed? What's been your response to that kind of questioning?
Yeah. I mean, edibles are definitely the biggest thing that we want to think about when it comes to kids. So talking about it with your kids, I think, is important depending on their ages, but teaching them to identify a cannabis edible to the point that my kids are, 10 and 13, telling them, if you eat this, you will not feel good, you will feel bad. And, that's enough. Like, that's a deterrent for them.
Yep.
When they get more curious, when they're teens and they want to experiment with altered consciousness, it'll be a different conversation, right? And then we'll talk more about appropriate dosing and sourcing. But, so right now I taught them to identify the pot leaf symbol, the THC symbol, whatever is on the edibles
I was going to
package.
say, this is what it's almost, I don't equate it to the poison symbol because I think it's too strong, but I think it's smart. And if you're looking on screen or watching on YouTube, you can see the traditional, it's a little bit blurry, kind of leaf triangle symbol that's become very common on most legal products in most states. So A, that symbol lets you know it's a legal product. Typically illegal products don't worry about all the branding and labeling. And, obviously we haven't got there, but you can safely assume you should always look for QR codes, scan, look for lab results of the stuff you're buying, especially if you're not in a licensed dispenser. If you're buying a product like Delta 8, make sure you know where it comes from. But I think that's important to note. I love that line. It's like, look for the symbol, right? If you have a bag of something and just look over the bag, and if they're always, if it's a legal product, going to have that symbol. So
absolutely. And, right. And childproof packaging, is required in most states, but that to me, that's not a substitute for parenting. That's not a substitute for, keeping it out of reach. So in addition to teaching them how to identify it, I also keep my edibles locked. I keep my flower locked as well. I think just out of an abundance of caution. And when I'm talking to other parents, like, I literally tell them my cannabis is locked, and I know how to keep kids safe. I'm very responsible around kids. And, before kids come to my house, we often have that conversation just about other things too, guns, pharmaceuticals, alcohol. Like, it's awkward. It sucks, but I think that
it's part of being a parent, and being a parent is awkward and sometimes sucks. I am not the type of person who won't say every night I go to bed, I'm like, no more. But every morning I wake up, I'm like, I want 40 more children. Like, that balance throughout a day, every single day, is powerful. And, there's nuance to that.
I hear you. Yep.
Nuance to a lot of things. Danielle Simone Brand, thank you for joining us today. We're still feel like we're just getting started in our conversation, but we got to end this show here. Algorithms, how it works. For that, a good 60-minute show. But thank you, Danielle, for joining us today, talking about your book, Weed Mom, which is available anywhere that you look to purchase books. But head to Amazon. You can head to Danielle Simone Brand. Those links are in the comments below to support them. You can check out on Instagram at Weed Mom Book, at Danielle Simone Brand. Once again, links are in the comments. To show that support. Who knows how long those accounts will be around? So head there and follow them where they're at. You can also find Danielle was kind enough to join us on our 420 special of this year. Around the 151 mark, an hour and 51 minutes in, you can hear Danielle join us to talk a little bit about Courage in Cannabis, the book, I think Volume 2 they're doing with Dr. Bridget Williams there. So Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today. Clearly there's a ton to talk about, and we hope to have you back on, but thank you for joining us on Because Cannabis and sharing your story, talking about Weed Mom, and kind of how hard it is to be a perfect parent with all this potent product floating around these days.
Thank you so much. So much fun to talk to you both.
All right, everyone, that is our show for today. Every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, you can find us brand new shows, just like this amazing conversation that we had with Danielle Simone Brand. Conversations, great guests. Be sure to check out a lot of the past episodes when you subscribe. Get those notifications for current episodes. Follow us socially at MeetWM, at Because Cannabis. Don't forget to check out our friends at Bud Love. Enter the code Wayward15 at checkout for 15% off. New shows also Thursdays, Spotify, everywhere you listen to audio. Dustin, always great to see you every single week for the show.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you guys next week.